Okay, cool. And hopefully you see my screen as well, right? All right, then let's begin the session. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the discussion on infrastructure as code using Ansible. So we are going to talk about infrastructure as code or Ansible or configuration management. We are going to understand the basics of what do all these terms mean. Okay. And then once you are done with this session, you will also understand how the same principles or the same concepts can be applied on other tools, other similar tools like Puppet and Chef and ARM templates or cloud formation templates and things like that. Okay, so let's talk about infrastructure as code, and then let's solve that infrastructure as code concept using Ansible, right? So it's going to be a very, very high level introductory session. I'm not going to go into deep of the tool and of the concepts. I'm just going to give you a head start in explaining you the problem that it solves and how it solves it. Okay. So let's say you are working in an organization and you have, let's say, various infrastructure components. Let's say you have many virtual machines across your infrastructure, right? You have many VMs and or physical machines or whatever. And as a infrastructure engineer, it's your job to manage the virtual machines. Let's focus on virtual machines itself. Let's say your job is to manage VMs and you are the infra engineer, right? Or systems engineer, or you can say I'm the DevOps guy, whatever you want to call this person in this role. So the requirement is that you have to manage the VMs. Now, when I say manage the VMs, what does that mean? And so there are two parts of managing an infrastructure. There are two parts, right? First is provisioning this infrastructure. So your responsibility could be to create the VMs or create the virtual machines, right? Another point is that you may want to configure the virtual machines, configure the operating system on top of the virtual machines, right? So as an infrastructure engineer, you might be expected to create virtual machines or configure virtual machines with the correct configuration. Maybe you have to install some software, create some files, create some users, run some service, whatever is required, right? Now, how do you do that? Your first approach would be that, hey, it's pretty easy. I'm going to log into my cloud account. Let's say Azure account. I'm going to log in here and then perform any manual activity for creating the VMs. Maybe it's just 6 VMs. I'm going to create virtual machines, attach the disk, choose the operating system, whatever is required, and then I will have the VMs. And then I will manually log into each VM and then configure whatever is required. So maybe I will write a script or I have some commands that I will execute and the servers will be configured, right? So this is pretty straightforward, achievable task. But what if you have maybe 6,000 or 600 servers or maybe 6,000 servers that you have to manage? Then it becomes challenging. And also you have to ensure that whatever configuration you are applying on these servers, they stay on the server. Nobody should be able to take away the configurations or remove configurations or misconfigure or change configurations, right? So how do you make sure that your infrastructure is in a state which your team desires, right? So there are 6,000 VMs and some VMs are configured in a way, other VMs are configured in a different way, and different VMs in different way, and the configuration is persistent, right? How do you do that? So for achieving configuration of large scale infrastructure, we use a solution called configuration management. You can also call it as server configuration management. And this is a programmatic approach to manage the infrastructure, right? So what it means is, it means that there is a tool which sits between your cloud provider and you yourself, right? A systems engineer or infrastructure engineer. Let's separate this out. So you are the infra engineer and you do not directly interact with your cloud provider or your infrastructure provider. What you do is you use a tool, and this tool talks to your cloud provider and performs all the changes, right? The tool is called a CM tool. So it could be Ansible, it could be Puppet, it could be something else, right? So you talk to this tool, and this tool understands your request and then talks to cloud provider to do whatever you want. Okay. How do you talk to this tool? You talk to this tool by giving it requests or by telling the tool, what do you want to achieve, right? Starting with this example, you can tell this tool that, hey, I want 10 VMs, and these are the configurations of the VMs. So you write the request down. This is your desire. You write your desire, you feed it to the CM tool, and the CM tool understands your desire and then achieves the desire on the cloud provider. So it will talk to the cloud provider, let's say again Azure, and it's going to create those 10 VMs. Right? Creates the 10 VMs. You do not have to manually create it. The implementation work will be done by the configuration management tool. You have to just tell it what to do. This is the basic principle of configuration management. Now, this methodology is called infrastructure as code, IAC, because you define your infrastructure as code, right? This is your infrastructure and you define it as a text file or as a code. And this acts as the single source of truth for this entire infrastructure, right? So this is the approach that we try to implement using Ansible, right? So now let's talk about Ansible. What is Ansible and how it works? So Ansible is nothing but an infrastructure as a code tool. And what it does is it stands between your infrastructure, existing infrastructure, okay? It stays between your existing infrastructure. So let's say this is Ansible and this is you, right? Now what Ansible does is Ansible actually does not create any infrastructure. As you see, there are two perspectives on managing the infrastructure. One is creating it and one is configuring it. So first step is creation of new infrastructure, new servers, new VMs, and second is configuration. Ansible helps in configuration of existing infrastructure components. So if you already have, let's say, 3 VMs and you want to configure them in certain way, then you can use Ansible or Puppet. If you want to provision something from scratch, then there are different tools to do that. So we have Azure RM templates, we have AWS CloudFormation, we have Terraform. You can use those tools. Ansible is used for configuration specifically and only. You can actually use Ansible for provisioning as well, but that's generally not the best practice because it has a lot of limitations. Okay, all right. Now let's see how Ansible works. As we already know, infrastructure as code means you as a user of Ansible are going to write a piece of code. And this piece of code is nothing but a desire, right? And you feed this desire to Ansible. And Ansible is going to talk to your infrastructure and realize that desire or implement that desire. Okay. Now there are various components in Ansible that come into play. First is there is Ansible core. This Ansible core is nothing but the binary which is responsible for orchestrating all this. Okay, so it's a tool, it's a single tool. And now this binary requires other supporting elements to actually achieve this entire orchestration. So you write the desire and you feed it to Ansible. What Ansible is going to do, the next thing Ansible is going to do is it's going to only configure the infrastructure which is under its purview. That means which is defined to be managed by Ansible. There could be hundreds of servers in your infra, right? There could be hundreds of servers, but you only want to manage these three because these are under your responsibility. So you have set up an Ansible server and you want to manage only these three machines. So in Ansible, you write something called as inventory, right? Inventory is nothing but a list of hosts or lists of machines which you can manage with Ansible. Host 1, host 2, like that. So you will have the IP addresses or the DNS names of these hosts which you want to manage. There could be more hosts and they will be added here. So when you write your desire has to be realized on the hosts which are made aware to Ansible, which are available for Ansible to work. Okay. All right. So Ansible inventory is one of the input. Another input is, although Ansible will understand this desire, but to implement this desire on these hosts, Ansible has to connect to these hosts. It has to connect to these hosts and then perform a lot of operations on these hosts. How does it connect? It connects via SSH in case of Linux machines. If it is Windows-based machine, then it has other protocol called WinRM, which it uses. We are not going to talk about that. But for most of the infrastructure needs, SSH is fine. So it connects via SSH. But what does it do after connecting via SSH? What it does is it uses something called as modules. What are modules? Modules are nothing but small binaries. Like your phone has apps, right? Your phone comes with defined feature set, but you can add more features using apps. Similarly, Ansible comes with its own capabilities, but you add capabilities by using modules. These are external binaries or scripts which are used by Ansible to perform the operations on the virtual machines. So if your desire says, I want to create a user on all these machines, there will be a module which will be responsible for achieving that desire. So Terraform is going to understand your desire, which is to create a user on all the machines. It's going to validate the desire with the inventory, if it can manage it. And then it's going to use this module, send the module across to these servers and execute the module to achieve the desire, achieve the implementation. Okay, so these are some components which are available in Ansible. Now, as a user, you can either write your desire in a piece of code, which is known as playbook. Okay, either you can write it in a piece of code, or you can actually configure the infrastructure in an ad hoc way. Maybe, uh, maybe your boss came and said, hey, there's a misconfiguration on 100 servers. Can you quickly fix it? So you can run some command, which are known as ad hoc commands or ad hoc tasks. And you execute these to perform changes on all the hosts on the fly. Okay. But if you want to make changes on the servers in a structured way with proper documentation and version control and everything, then you write a playbook. Right? Cool. So now let's take a look at ad hoc tasks. First, let's get a couple of servers. So I will get 2 or maybe 3 servers. We will set up Ansible in one server and then configure other hosts for working as hosts, which we can manage using Ansible. Right? So just give me 1 second. I don't know how I can pause my sharing. I think I ended my sharing, but it's okay. Give me a second. Let's start the sharing again. Right. Okay, so this is my AWS account. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 instances pretty quickly. Okay, this is not a AWS class, so I'm not going to show you how I'm creating the servers. If you are aware, you can already do it by yourselves. Okay. But if not, you have to learn on your own. This is not a AWS class. So I'm just going to go with the default things. All right, so I have 3 servers now. They are all starting up. Let's wait for them to come up. One is up. All the machines are up. Right? Right. Okay, so I have three machines now. right? So there is, let's say I have a machine called A. You can see the title, it says A. And it means that I'm going to use this as my Ansible server, right? Or Ansible control machine. I'm going to use this machine to set up my central Ansible automation. And then I'm going to use H1 and H2, and I'm going to configure them. Okay, so the only thing that I need to do is on the Ansible server, I need to install core Ansible system, and then I have to enable this SSH passwordless authentication. So I'm going to use a SSH key pair for authentication. Okay, and then we can use Ansible freely. So let's do that quickly. I'm going to install Ansible on the Ansible server. So I will just say apt install Ansible. Hopefully it works. Let's wait for it to finish. All right, done. Ansible is installed on my Ansible server. If I run the command Ansible, I should get some output. Fine. Ansible version. Right, I get some output. Cool. You can see Ansible core version 2.16.3 is installed. All right. Now, the other thing that I want is I want this Ansible server to be able to SSH to hosts, so H1 and H2. Now, this should be done automatically in production environments. But since it is lab and I'm demonstrating you the entire workflow, I'm going to manually set it up. So if I do an SSH and give the host name of H1, it will not work. Right? Permission denied because the target host does not have the public key. So I'm not sure how much aware you are of SSH, but if you're not, then you will get the recording of this video. So watch SSH, watch the details of SSH, and then come back and watch this video again, right? Okay, so I'm going to create an SSH key pair and let's do one thing SSH region. Cool. So I create my SSH key pair. I copy the public key and I'm going to add that on both the hosts. Right? Save. And now if you see, if I do an SSH again to my host, I'm able to successfully connect to the 62 machine. And the 62 machine is H1. Okay, right. Similarly, I should be able to connect to this machine as well. Done, connected. So this way I can now, my Ansible server can talk to H1 and H2. Perfect. Setup is done. Okay, now we need to tell Ansible that it needs to manage H1 and H2. Although it can connect to it, but that is a operating system level configuration. The OS of Ansible, which is Ubuntu, can talk to the OS of other Ansible or these hosts. But Ansible needs to know that H1 and H2 are to be managed by Ansible. So we have to create an inventory file and we have to give the information about both the hosts. All right. So on Ansible server, if you go to /etc Ansible, not sure why I couldn't find Ansible here. etc. Okay, anyways, in my home directory, let's go to my home directory. I'm going to create a file called inventory. And in this inventory, it's a simple file. I just need to give the host name of my host, right? And give it a name, which should be like a nickname or a friendly name to Ansible. I say my host one, Ansible underscore host equal to this. Similarly, I say my host two, and the host name would be this one. Right. So now I have an inventory file, a plain text file, which contains information about the host which I want to manage and a friendly name for the host. So I mentioned here my host one, my host two, right? And now I'm going to run one command, which is going to test if Ansible can understand this inventory, and if it can understand this inventory, if it can connect to these machines. Okay, so I say Ansible this command here. Okay, all right. So I missed to do this. Let's see. All right. So I will talk about what we did in this command, but we should focus right now on the output. The output is successful. So you can see here, Ansible was able to connect to my host one and my host two. Now, Ansible setup is done. I hope you guys are with me, although it might be too much if you are very new to the industry and the domain. But it can help you to at least give some idea. And maybe you can revisit the video a couple of times and do something hands-on. Then it will make more sense. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm running this command called Ansible all blah 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 blah. What does this do? So I'm running an ad hoc command. This is an ad hoc command, which is running some on the fly Ansible commands, right? I say Ansible, use this inventory. Dash I is for inventory. Use this inventory, and on all the hosts which are in the inventory, use a module called ping. Okay, too many things here. So Ansible, use this inventory because I want to manage the hosts which are part of this inventory. So use this inventory and run this module, which is ping module, on all the hosts. So when it uses this inventory, it gets information about these two hosts, and then it has information that that Ansible should run on all the hosts. So what it does is Ansible connects to both the hosts and runs a module ping on them. What is a module? A module is nothing but a binary which performs very specific tasks. And this ping module is a specific module which just tests the connectivity of the host. So that means it just sends a message called ping and receives a message successfully called pong. That's all it does. Okay. Now you understand how Ansible can talk to the host and perform any infrastructure changes. Now let's talk about what possibilities do we have. Can we create a user on all the hosts? Can we install a package on all the hosts? So let's first go to, let's say, host one, and I run a command called finger. A finger is a tool which can be installed on Linux machines, which shows you some information about the machine. What it does, what information it shows, it's not important. What important to us right now is that finger tool is not installed on H1. It is also not installed on H2. Just 1 second, please. Right. So now let's say our requirement is that there should be package called finger to be installed on both H1 and H2. How can we do that? We don't want to manually log in on H1 and H2. We want to use Ansible for that. So this is a very specific configuration. This configuration about installation of package, right? So I'm going to write a simple task here. I will say Ansible. I'm going to go to Ansible machine. And I will say on all the hosts, use the inventory called inventory. And on all the hosts, then I'm going to go give further instructions. I want to use the module called apt. So there is a module called apt, which allows Ansible to, or enable Ansible to install apt packages on the system. Ansible or -I inventory -m apt. And then I can give it some arguments like which package and what and everything. So I can say name equal to finger and state equal to present. So I want to use the app module on all the hosts which are in this inventory. And these are the parameters for the app module. That means the app module should behave based on the input that I have provided here. So app module should ensure that a package with the name finger should be in a state called present. That means it should ensure that on all the hosts in this inventory, this package should be present. That means if it is already present, don't do anything. If it is not present, then install it. Right? Let's run this command and let's see what happens. It is going to give us some error, maybe. No, it is done. Right? So we get this yellow color output and the status changed says true. That means it has changed something on the system. And you can see some standard output, what it has done. And at the end, you will see Finger is installed on both my host 1 and my host 2. It has installed the packages. So if I say Finger again, it should run and give us some output. Right? So from one command, you managed all the hosts in this inventory. Right now, there are 2 hosts, but if there were 1,000 hosts, all of them will have this installed. Let's say from H2, I remove this Finger manually. Done. If I run the command Finger, it won't work. So now H1 has Finger installed, H2 has Finger not installed. Let's run this command again. I'm saying ensure that app module should ensure that Finger is present on all the hosts. So it talks to my host 1 and it says changed is false. That means it didn't do anything on my host 1 because their Finger already exists. On my host 2, it made a change and it installed the Finger package. This is called idempotency. That means if no changes need to be made, then don't make any changes. Don't try to reinstall something if it is already installed. Okay, so this is how you can use a module to create or manage various configurations of an operating system. Now, there are many other modules which can help us in managing various configurations of an operating system. Maybe you want to have some users created on the host. Maybe you want to have some specific files created on the host. You want to have some services running. You want to create a database. You want to install or you want to clone a Git repository. Everything can be done. Right? Let me show you some variations of this command. Let's say there is a user called Alice. And if I see if Alice is installed on our host, I can just do a command called ID for that particular user. I say ID Alice, and it says Alice no such user. I say ID Alice on host 2, no such user. Let's say I want to install Alice on the host. Now, first of all, let's see some variations of this Ansible command. I'm going to say Ansible my host 1 -I inventory. So now whatever module I'm going to write, Ansible should only consult my host 1 from inventory. Previously, I was saying all, right? Ansible all. That means Ansible is going to run that module on all the hosts. But now, because I'm specifying a very specific host, it's going to only perform the change or run the module on my host 1. So I say Ansible, my host 1 -I inventory. The module that I want to use is user. There is a module called user. But then I need to tell the user module that the Alice user should be installed, right? So I'm going to say name Alice, state present. Ansible ensure that the host, my host 1 from this inventory has a user with the name Alice present on it. Done. I get a yellow sign, which is it changed something on the system. That means the user didn't exist on the system, so it has created the user. If I run this command again, I should get a green output, which says changed is equal to false. That means it already exists. Okay, let's go to H1 and I run command ID Alice. I get an output. That means Alice user already exists now. And let's run ID Alice here. It says Alice is not installed. So it did not do anything on H2. Okay, let's go through documentation. If I look for Ansible modules, you can find all the modules to manage specific areas of the config of the operating system. For example, if I go to the packaging modules, you can see there is a module called apt. I have already used this module, the apt module, right, to install the finger package. You can come here and see more about that module. Similarly, if you are running on Red Hat based systems, you may want to use Yum. If you're running on Alpine based systems, you may want to use APK. So you can use different modules. If I go to system modules, let's say, there is a module called user, which we use to create a user. So you can read more about it. There are many other systems modules. For example, you can reboot a machine. You can run Puppet. You can, let's say, you can manage the host name of a machine. You can create user groups. You can create a file system. Many things. You can, for example, set up SE Linux. You can set SE Linux policies. But many things can be done, right? So these are the modules which you can use maybe in your free time or whenever you get the opportunity to read more about these modules. So that's all I had planned for today. We did not cover playbooks, so maybe in the next session, whenever we have it, I can cover playbooks where we actually write a code file in which we define our desire. So rather than running ad hoc tasks, we write our desires in a playbook and then use that to configure our infrastructure. Let's have some questions. We still have some time, so I can take some questions before wrapping up the session today. So use the Q&A tab for asking the questions, and I'll try to answer them. Can Ansible manage Windows hosts? Yes, Ansible can manage Windows hosts. Um, so first thing is you cannot connect to Windows host via SSH. So you have to use WinRM. Okay, WinRM is a separate module which you can use to connect Windows hosts. Generally, you don't use Ansible in the industry to manage Windows hosts because Microsoft has its own host management solutions. So yeah, can you share that link? This link modules, I can share it. No worries. I'm trying to understand how Ansible differs from Active Directory GPO for OS configuration. Active Directory GPO. Let's see what it does. Active Directory GPO. This is group policy objects. So this is, I think, user policies, user and group policies, right? It's not for the operating system configuration itself. It's about how much authorization a user has on a particular machine. That's all right. And also it's limited to Microsoft machines. That's what I understand. Create user with sudo access. Well, if you want to create a user with sudo access, so you have to create a user and then give that user sudo access. Let's see if we can find a module for that. Maybe you have to create a sudo file and push that on in the sudo d directory. So in the sudoers.d directory, you can create a file which grants the user sudo access. And for creating that file, you can use the file module. So I think that should be done. We have to use two modules. User module to create the user and then file module to create the sudoers file. Which tool you will recommend for provisioning VMs, assuming Ansible has limitation for provisioning? For any cloud environment, I will suggest use Terraform. Either Terraform or the other option is to use that cloud provider's templating solution. Like Azure has ARM templates and AWS has CloudFormation. SSH full form. SSH full form is Secure Shell. As a beginner, how can I start the learning Ansible and other DevOps tools? Can you please let me know the best training platform available for it? So you can reach out to SkillUpRight. There are also loads of YouTube videos available for the same. And now that you know about Ansible, maybe you can search for more internet resources and learn Ansible. You can also follow this excellent documentation by Ansible, right? So Ansible has very, very good detailed documentation and you can go through it. How to write multiple Ansible playbooks? A playbook is nothing but a piece of code, piece of text. So you can write multiple text files. I don't see any challenge there. Are we able to manage files using Ansible? Yes, you can use the file modules. So there are various modules to manage files, various kinds of files. So for example, there's a module called copy, which can be used. There's a module called file, which can be used. So these two are very popular. There is also a module called template, which should be used. So yeah. How can I find out which module is for which OS? Oh, that has to come from experience. For example, if I go to system, not system, packaging modules, and you will see OS specific packaging modules. So you need to know what you are dealing with here. Create user with sudo access can be edit Linux files with Ansible. I think I answered this question. You cannot edit existing files on different hosts, but you can create a file on Ansible machine and copy that on the host. Can Ansible manage Windows hosts? Yeah, I think I answered that. Ansible or Puppet, which one is user friendly and easy to use? The one which you know more, right? Both are equally powerful, both are equally versatile, but wherever you feel comfortable is the one you should go to. There is no answer for that. Is Ansible restricted to VMs or can it be used to run a playbook in a Kubernetes cluster hosted in cloud? Oh, so you want Ansible to deploy Kubernetes workloads? I don't think so. You should be using Ansible for that. You can use either Helm or you can use Terraform as well, actually, for managing workloads. Yeah. All right. I don't see any more questions now. So I'll say thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And in the next session, we will try to cover Ansible playbooks. And hopefully you guys can make it to the next session. Right. So thank you so much for your time. By the way, my name is Amit. So I'm Amit and I'm based out of Bangalore. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. And do take care. Have fun. And let's meet next time. Thank you. Bye.